So good morning. So it seems a little, I don't want to say strange, but odd to be trying to give a normal talk this morning with bombs falling all over the Middle East. But I'm going to go ahead. Um, this week's topic is livelihood, appropriate livelihood, skillful livelihood, one of the limbs on the Eightfold Path. And I believe it's hard to find specifics. I'm not an expert in the original teachings, but I believe it's been hard to find specifics on any of the limbs of the Eightfold Path. They're not elaborated too much. But as Linda mentioned on Sunday, there is a sutta that mentions 5 vocations to avoid. Trading in weapons. This, in modern terms, that does not specifically mean soldiers, but seems to point to what we'd call arms dealers today. Trading in living beings. At first, this seems to point towards those who bought and sold human slaves, but I suppose it could also include buying and selling animals and plants, perhaps for nefarious purposes. Meat production, that was another one. This would point to butchering animals for sale as meat. Trading in intoxicants. This could be like drug dealers, but may also include those who sell alcohol. Poisons, not sure of a modern day equivalent, but maybe it could include industries that are creating extreme pollution. So one's livelihood is not supposed to include working as an arms dealer, as trading in slaves, nor as a drug dealer, nor as a butcher, or in an industry causing extreme pollution. And this list does not include, in the Buddha's time, such lay practices, careers as in farming, trading, being a merchant, soldiers aren't mentioned, banking, bureaucrats, teachers, what most people did on carrying on their lives. So I'm just going to say this, that seems like a pretty low bar and leaves a lot of latitude. In our contemporary American setting, we could say, well, what about working as an ICE agent these days? Or what if you're a Navy pilot ordered to go on bombing raids? Then things get a little more complicated here. And I'm not even going to go into the whole cattle raising, meat production thing. People have lots of different opinions about that. However, as Linda pointed towards, thinking of right livelihood, not just in terms of the work we do, but as a way we sustain ourselves. And this was an idea that Stephen Batchelor had proposed in some of his recent writing. Yesterday, Linda went in the direction of how we sustain ourselves emotionally, especially in these difficult times when you continually see photos and videos of smoke billowing out of bombed out buildings within civilian neighborhoods, they look like. A definition of livelihood is the means of supporting one's existence. An important way of broadening that is to extend it to how we keep ourselves going, including our states of mind and our moods. And she alluded to how we mutually sustain ourselves through family relationships, friendships, and especially spiritual friendships. Today, I even saw an article in the New York Times explaining some research as to how dog owners and cat owners seem to have longer lives. In other words, dogs and cats help sustain us. But I'm going on going to go towards how we sustain ourselves physically. Not just the work we do, but broaden that around, the food, shelter, energy, and so on. In other words, the resources we use to keep ourselves going. And this includes not just how we sustain ourselves as individuals, but also all the ways we sustain our families, our pets, our homes, our gardens, our communities, and our country. In terms of ethics and the spirit of the Eightfold Path, this is not an easy problem to solve. There's no clear-cut answer on what is the appropriate level of resources to use to sustain ourselves and our families. Obviously, the less used, the less harm is caused. But we don't have the expectation of causing no harm. Our practice is a move towards creating less harm. We live in a world where various ecosystems of the planet are threatened, ecosystems that actually sustain us. So this question about how we go about supporting ourselves is important. Most of us have chosen not to be monastics. We live within the context of our families, culture, and country. But even monastics these days have some responsibility for the resources used by the society as a whole. So the ethical problem becomes, how do we sustain ourselves while living within the boundaries that our culture has set for us? These are the conditions in which we were born and we live. And this creates a real level of complexity. There's no clear-cut solution to say, now I'm living in a way that creates no harm. But I'm just going to propose this, but this is where awareness comes in. And this is where intention to do less harm comes in. The various limbs of the Eightfold Path are intertwined and overlap. Our intention to do less harm in sustaining ourselves is related to appropriate intention. And the awareness we bring to the resource problem is related to sati, an awareness of the context in which we live and practice. Both appropriate intention and sati are limbs on the Eightfold Path. One response to this complexity that is not helpful, in my own opinion, in thinking about appropriate livelihood is guilt. Guilt takes a lot of mental energy and, in my experience, impedes both intention and awareness. And a fantasy of moving to a simple life by Walden Pond is not a solution, even if it were feasible for certain individuals. Just having the opportunity to experiment like that, as many did in the 60s, is a privilege provided by our society, and that society, as we noted earlier, is using a lot of resources. On the other hand, working with the question, what is appropriate livelihood in my life, in the conditions in which I live, in the context of my family, with their habits and traditions, in the context of my neighborhood, with its structures and established ways of doing things, this is a good starting point for taking our practice into our daily life, and perhaps for some of us into the life of our communities. And I am going to stop there. I appreciate your listening this morning. We will do our usual approximately 30 minutes of meditation